Thanks, Maya, and thank you, Amy, for moving the slides for us. So it's really encouraging to see so many people dialed in today. And unlike Maya, I don't speak as clearly and I speak way too fast. So please use the Q&A box, ask any questions you have at the end, and let me explain anything that I fail to articulate clearly as we go. As you're looking at your screen, I'll talk about how we're conceptualized here in just a moment. And I'll talk a little bit about that last set of bullets on pandemic recovery and the working group and how we went about doing what we are talking about today. And I'll address those capabilities bullets largely in the slides that follow. So how did FB-ISAO come to be? Back in 2015, right around Valentine's Day, President Obama looked around the threat environment and seeing the success of the information sharing and analysis centers that have been supporting critical infrastructure since 1998. He said, hey, let's expand this model to other communities. Maybe they're topically based, geographically based, specifically focused, but beyond the critical infrastructure sectors alone. And my teammates and I, many of us who have been working in that space for a long time, try to really think through who would that apply to? Where would that make sense? Where is that capability needed? And we started in earnest in 2015 to try and develop faith-based ISAO. And to be honest, we really struggled for a couple of years. And so fortunately, smart and capable people like Maya and Jarina and Rob, some great team members and great members of the ISAO have come together the last couple of years. For the last 2 years, we've been able to develop a lot of things that are in front of you right now. Those reports, the collaboration, the information sharing communities, the workshops that Maya described. So it's been a really exciting 2 years. And I think what we're talking about today is probably my favorite thing that we've done as a community to date. So I'm looking forward to sharing more about that here in just a little bit. I'm going to skip down to the Pandemic Recovery Working Group. I'll talk about work groups a little bit here in just a moment. But the Pandemic Recovery Work Group is a little bit different than our other groups. We have several groups: preparedness, business resilience, cyber threat intelligence. You can see some of that on our website and our blogs where we, for example, develop our threat assessments and we share those. With our pandemic situation, we looked at our preparedness group and we started talking about how we would maybe manage some guidance or information for our community given the pandemic and eventual reopening activities. And so I'll walk you through a slide in just a little bit that sort of shows that timeline. But what we did is we said, hey, let's break off a group of interested partners from the pandemic recovery group, and let's invite some of our external partners from government and industry and other experts together, and let's have a specifically focused group just looking at recovery from this health threat and incident. And that's what we did. And so the slide I'll show that process a little bit more, but it's been a great collaborative process with Rob and Jarina, Maya, as well as partners from the venue community, sports stadiums and arenas, government partners, and other members of our FB-ISAO community. It's been really exciting to see, and I'm glad to share about that today. Next slide, please. Okay, so right here, Maya talked about membership, and just so everybody knows, there's several layers of levels of membership to include our basic membership, which has no cost, and so free things are good. And so if nothing else, while you're sitting here looking at these slides today, you can go to the website address on the top of your screen. You can join at no cost today, become a member, and at least get that much more information. You'll get our daily reports, you'll get some other TLP white communications, and other information we can make available to you. And then there's also some tiered membership for our government partners that might be on the line. We offer our highest level of membership at absolutely no cost to any government, whether that's local, state, fusion center, or a law enforcement partner. So you want to be able to be fully involved in everything that the ISAO does because your partnership is so very critical. There's also additional membership layers for those who might be interested, and we'd love to get you more involved. If you have any questions, please reach out, let us know, and let us tie you into what we're doing, because it's really, the community only benefits by the more folks that are involved in everything that we're trying to do. So we'd love to get more of you involved. It's so great to see so many of you dialed in today. Next slide, please. Okay, great. So this slide is honestly a lot cooler when it's animated, but we couldn't do that on the webinar. We do that in person. What you see in all those boxes is some of the types of reports that we send out. So we send out a daily newsletter you can subscribe to. We send out routine communications to all members, if sharing government ideas, government guidance, things like that. We also send out weekly physical and cybersecurity reports. The cybersecurity report just went out today, and monthly threat reports and other processes may be available. We also use a Slack workspace to collaborate on a daily basis. So you can see some of that displayed in front of you. Again, there's a lot more to get into, and hopefully we can bring some of you into that process as we go along. Next slide, please. All right, so one of the things we're really trying to encourage is incident reporting, where members can share with members things that are occurring in their community. We've been excited to see some members start to do that already. Suspicious activities, incidents of their venues, just getting others ideas of what's happening so we can all be more aware, more informed, and take mitigating actions we see something that might be developing in our own community, leveraging what others are seeing in there. So really excited to introduce this. There's a fun way to do that in Slack, and we're excited to see members take advantage of that. Happy to talk more about that towards the end if there's time. Next slide, please. And we have our information sharing communities. Coming out of our workshops, and we've gotten ahead of those because of the coronavirus challenge we've been under that Maya talked about. We've established information sharing communities in Slack where folks of a geographical area can come together and share with a little bit of a more intimate group things that are occurring in their local community. So Florida is our first one, Orlando. So we've got an ISC, an information sharing community established for Central Florida, where folks in that community can say, hey, this is what we're seeing, this is what we're doing. Anybody know about this? Anybody seen this character? Whatever it might be to better enhance mutual situational awareness of what's going on in our very, very local environment. FB-ISAO is, by its design, a national organization. We want to make sure we can connect partners locally to build those relationships through our workshops, through ISCs, any other way that might make sense. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is just a slide I show us all the time because a lot of us are familiar. When we talk about information sharing and community, sometimes it seems a little bit vague and what are we really talking about. So a lot of you recognize this. This is a couple screenshots from Waze, right? And Waze is absolutely an information sharing community. You don't know everybody else that's on Waze, but when somebody identifies that, hey, there's a police car, obviously you only want to know that for safety reasons, not because anybody's ever speeding, because we're all good citizens. But when somebody identifies and reports there's a police officer, down the road here, we take advantage of that information and we manage our activities in accordance with that potential situation, right? And so that applies to construction and other things might be occurring on our route as well. The same process, that same idea of somebody identifying something, share that information, allowing others to take action to protect themselves, their interests, their vehicle, their property, right? Is the same thing that an ISAO is intended to do. Let's share information. Let's become more situationally aware. Let's take action and mitigate the risk facing our organizations every single day. Next slide, please. Okay, so here, working groups. You can see on your screen several of our working groups. I already mentioned our preparedness working group. We'd love to get you more involved in those. We love the collaboration. From our preparedness working group, we started this discussion on what are we going to do to provide guidance to the community. Next slide, please. You can see we started the conversation, that top left corner. That's my not so handsome mug in the corner there. That's April 21st. We start talking about the idea of maybe we need to do something specifically focused on recovery. 2 days later, in that middle box, we established a pandemic recovery working group. And blowing me away, 3 weeks later, Zarina shared the document that is now available for you to download in the handout section of your screen. And so 3 weeks flash to bang is pretty awesome. That's exactly what we want to do as an ISAO, is identify a situation, bring the community together, put something together that makes sense for our community, tailored for the community, by the community, and get it out to others to enhance awareness, to enhance risk mitigation, to get facilities back open safely, smartly, and securely. And thanks to Jarina, thanks to Rob, and thanks to other members, we were able to do that in 3 weeks, which I think is pretty cool. Next slide, please. And on your screen here, you can see where we announced this on 15 May. We made a document available. It's TLP green, meaning you're welcome to download it and share it. We just ask you do not publicly post it. If you want more background, you can go to the website, read more about that anytime that you want. Next slide, please. Jarina, I apologize. I took 7 extra seconds of my time. I give the floor to you to continue. Thank you very much, everybody. Back to mute.
Thank you, Andy. Hi, everyone. So I just want to talk to you a little bit about the process that went into developing the checklist that Andy just talked about. Took us a few weeks, but I think that's really good in terms of timing from conception to implementation. So we're really proud of the way we were able to work together, use that teamwork, and get that done and get that out to be useful to the community. So there were 5 key elements that guided our development of the checklist. There were a lot of things to consider, but we wanted to make sure this was simple, easy to use, very clear, and so there were a lot of things to sift through. And so we whittled all of those things down to 5 key elements that guided what we did. So I'll just walk us through each of them quickly to give you an idea of what went into it. So the first was alignment with federal guidance and an emphasis on state and local communication. So as we all know, there was a lot of noise out there and a lot of conflicting information, some good, some bad, some neutral. And we didn't want to add to any type of chaos. We wanted to just have a checklist that was useful and valuable, but that didn't override or did not seem to conflict with the federal guidance that had already been put out. So that's why you'll notice that the checklist follows the phased approach that the White House put out, not too many weeks ahead of the development of the checklist. We thought it was wise to follow that so that it would be something easy to follow up on when we looked at faith-based specific reopening issues. We also emphasized state and local communication. We didn't want the checklist to be used in isolation. We wanted to make sure that those who read it also were in lockstep with their state and local or regional officials or tribal officials, and that the checklist would buttress the guidance that was already being given, not just at the federal level, but also at the state and local level as well. So that was part one. The second key element was identification of core categories of action. So there were 4 that we ultimately landed on, but there were many categories that we could have put in, but we thought that looking at all the data, looking at all the themes of the guidance that had been coming out, we kept seeing some that rose to the top and that seemed to be most important. So those were the category of reopen and reentry, meaning this is specific guidance focusing on going from a state of not being open to opening, or a state of low usage to opening up and allowing more folks to come in and use facilities. So that fell into the category of reopening and reentry. The next was safety and security. So the guidance that fell into this category had to do with keeping people safe in general, also helping our faith-based partners to remember that because the pandemic was going on, it didn't mean that there are other threats, cyber and physical threats, were not out there. So we wanted to make sure that our faith-based partners kept these things in mind. And so we thought it was important to include this as a major category in the checklist. Third, health and hygiene. So of course, this is a big one. We wanted to make sure that we were passing on those really good pieces of guidance in terms of keeping your facility clean, keeping your people safe and healthy. And finally, continuity after action report preparation was the 4th category that we considered here. And we wanted to make sure that our partners realize that it's important to pay attention to what's going on now, but also pull out lessons as we go along so that when we develop our plans for the future, we can take what we learn and apply that as we move forward. So we thought it was important to put that continuity piece in there as well. So thirdly, we pulled a range of useful resources. So federal, local, general, broad categories of guidance, faith-based specific guidance as well. So there were a lot of things out there. So a lot of publications, a lot of news reporting, all across the board. And we wanted to pull the best of that into the checklist to make sure that it was, again, easy to use, easy to follow, that we could sift through everything and just pull out that guidance that was most helpful. We also wanted to make sure that we used a range of sources so that we could cover all bases and look at things that maybe on their face were things that wouldn't be considered. So we used industry guidance as well. We used the expertise from a lot of our partners on the pandemic reopening work task force as well. Fourth, distilling the most useful, smart, and best practices. We wanted to make sure that the checklist was useful for a range of faith-based organizations, so large, small, rural, urban, across the board. And so we also wanted to make it clear that what we were putting forth were smart practices, things that could be used as needed and things that could be adapted as needed. We didn't want the checklist to be prescriptive, meaning this is what you need to do, but we wanted it to be more of recommendations. Here are some good ideas. Here are things that we've gotten from the experts, and here are things that you can take and apply as you see fit. And then finally, at the most basic level, but also really important, we wanted to make it easy to understand and use because, we've all seen, great products that look like smart people put them together, but they're just not very user-friendly. We wanted the user experience to be great with this checklist. So that's why you'll notice that it's color-coded, explanations are clear and concise. There's a resources list at the end for you to use as needed. We use I don't know if anyone's heard of Atul Gawande and the checklist manifesto, but we kind of use that as a backbone to building this up, and use those best practices from building checklists to build this out and make it user-friendly. So with that, I will pass it on to Robbie Endow to talk us through more about the checklist and how best to use it. Thank you.